going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 prop in DFS live stream for the Procore Championship. Going to get you guys ready for all of your exposure tomorrow with a look at the weather, some of the stat averages from today, which side's going to play easier for Showdown. We'll talk through shots gained metrics, how to build your player pool, and any questions that you have along the way to help you out with your process. That can be any player pool deep dives that you got, any sort of bets that you guys want us to deep dive when we get to the prop section later on. Because it is a super late one over here, it is going to be a bit of a condensed one. That's why we're doing the two together. Going to keep this thing rolling to hopefully less than an hour, but the next hour is all of yours for those questions. So don't be shy to let me know anything that you're curious about. You have sites down there, a Illini fan as well. And I've got to say, yeah, if you guys are here for this late live stream for a fall swing event, you're one of the true sweaty tryhards. So you can wear that with a badge and let's get after it. So first things first, we're going to deal with the DFS side. So if you're here for props, underdog, and prize picks, that is going to be the second half of this live stream. First half, though, when we split it by the two waves, morning wave was the easier between the two. And what is really interesting about the makeup of these two waves is that the PM wave today was on average about $440 more expensive than the morning guys. So that was partially due to Scotty, right? He was up there at the very top. But if you look at the 8 and 9K range, a lot of your Premier Ryder Cup guys were on that side of the draw. So the fact that it played 0.2 strokes difference might actually increase when we get to round 2, because the guys that were in the afternoon are, I think, much more talented players. So that combined with lower winds, I think is going to lead to about a half a stroke difference. So speaking of, let's show you that weather forecast. This is the HRRR for Silverado. Just like today, it is going to be a little bit cooler in the morning hours. That was just like what we had for today's round. But the wind gusts aren't nearly as significant. In fact, your sustained winds go from about 2 to 3 miles an hour in the morning to closer to 9 to 10 miles an hour in the afternoon, which is what I think led to that kind of a difference. It maybe got firmer and faster as the day went on as well. So the morning guys not only are going to have slightly better weather conditions, but could also have more receptive greens to attack as well. So those top tier players that were going to cost you more for your main slate lineups are the ones that I think you want to stack for your lineups tomorrow. So you'll see that slightly influencing the player pool that I'm going with. But this isn't the kind of situation where you have to only use guys from the AM side of things. It is more of a tiebreaker for me. I still have, I think, like 5, maybe even 10 players from the PM side in my player pool. I will say, though, that they're mostly mid to higher tier guys. When I'm looking at my 6K range play, a lot of my dart throws towards the bottom, I was primarily trying to find players that were on the AM side of things. So I think it's important, something that you should keep in the back of your mind, but not something that you have to adhere to 100% of the time. The next thing we'll go through would be the ownership towards the top end of the board, which is going to give us a sense for where the rest of the field is going. So I've got the top 15 highest owned players on here for reference for tomorrow. And you're going to see that they're across a wide variety of salary ranges. Top owned play would be a Russell Henley, who I have at about 26%. Ben Griffin at number 2 with his -8 round at about 24.5%. But in general, it's your players that played well today. So your Spawns, your Akshays, your Jackson Clevens that are already in the top 20 at this stage are the ones that are getting that extra exposure. And there are a few exceptions to that role, like a JT, a Sam Burns, that are getting ownership just because they're at the top end of the board. But especially when we get to like the 6 and 7K range players, the chalk is almost exclusively players that shot -4 or -5 today. So that's what you'll see with the ownership. It is rather predictable. And unlike a Sunday Showdown slate where the placement points in your starting position actually matters, you get no benefit with being one of these players. The only benefit to taking one of these guys that's towards the top end of ownership is usually good form because of how they played for today, which is helpful. It does give players a boost in your process, but at the same time, it's only a small bump. And oftentimes these players are 3 to 5 times higher owned than some of the guys around them. So you would say that they're over-owned for the kind of equity that they bring to the table, which is oftentimes where we're fading a lot of these players here. So there are a few that are still sneaking into my laps, especially the AM guys towards the top end of the board. But when we're looking at somebody that is 12 to 15% owned, and he's a 7K range player, it's going to be tough for me to want to get over the field there. And Arico Hoey, for example, has fantastic shots gained metrics for tomorrow. But if you're going to use him, you're going to have to differentiate elsewhere because, oftentimes you're using somebody more popular, the 8, 9, and 10K range, because they're just higher owned by default, which is why when you're using a 6 or a 7K range guy that's getting that ownership, it's a little bit troublesome because you're already using chalk towards the middle to the top end of the board. And then if you're pairing it up with 2 to 3 of those guys at the bottom, that's when you could really run into duplication issues and also not have enough leverage to move up in those GPPs. So just something to keep in mind. Also with the Showdown format, guys, it's the most chaotic that we have for golf. And golf is already one of the harder to predict sports that we have out there, being one of the more random from event to event and round to round. When we only have 18 holes to work with as opposed to 72 over an entire event, that variance gets ramped up even more. So this chalk is already worthy of fading for main slate kind of scenarios, but especially when we're playing on the Showdown side. So these projections, of course, are from my Patreon page, still doing all these projections during the fall swing for you guys. And if you want to see ownership for the entire field, if you want to see some of the low-owned dart plays that you can get to, you guys can find that in the description of this video. Patreon page, the golf DFS tier is what you can join for that. I also have my player pool on there. And what we're going to cycle into next year is how to build that player pool. And if you've watched one of these live streams on my channel before or over there on the Ship It Nation channel, you guys will know that I have a very consistent process. I look for ball striking poppers, guys that played well with their irons and off the tee play today. I look for short game regression candidates, people that maybe were okay ball striking, but left a lot to be desired with their short game, not as consistent as the ball striking. So that's why we look for ball striking poppers and give a lot of grace and forgiveness to players that weren't able to do it, but they're around the green in the putting. I also look for course history guys, and I also look for high upside players. So it's not just going to be the shots gained metrics that we're about to go through here that I'm using to make my plays, but we're also looking at things like course history and also their birdie or better percentage. So that's why being a part of my Patreon page and having this event history is massive, because you can do a lot of that research for yourself. And hint, hint, Justin Lauer has some pretty good course history there. He might be one of those guys that's in the player pool and whatnot. And you can also take a look at the birdie or better stats that they have on the PGA Tour website. And, you'll find guys like Celinda that make a whole lot of birdies, or an Echevarria that is known for making a whole lot of birdies as well, that you'll see sneaking into my player pool. So anyone I have down as a yes, anyone that I'm using in my lineups for Friday will have one of those 4 tags to the right. And there's no exceptions to that rule, right? There's nobody that I'll just put down as a yes and not give you any sort of reasoning for it. And that's by design. Everyone that you're using in your lineups, you should be very intentional about why you're using them. So that's why I always try and show you guys these tags that I'm using, because even a pro like myself, especially because I'm doing the content for other people, is doing this and trying to give myself an idea of what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. Because the power of having these tags is not only you can be super intentional, kind of cut out some of the trash plays that were kind of sneaking into your lineups by accident, but also it lets you go after the fact and learn and kind of analyze what went well and what ended up tanking you in your lineups. And perhaps you look at the tag after the fact and you look at the stats from round 1, and it wasn't as good of a short game regression candidate as you previously thought. So that can be the kind of thing that you use to refine your process day after day, which is extremely valuable for your Showdown process. So now that we've gone through ownership, let's cycle over to the shots gained side and give you guys an idea of exactly how the players were playing today. So let's get that out of there. Let's bring up these shots gained metrics. I'll say hi to you guys in chat. And after we go through a few of the categories that we always do here together, we'll go through any of those player pool deep dives that you got. So if I skip over your questions now, I promise we'll get back to them a little bit later on. But let me say hi to you guys as you guys are getting into here. Let's see. You said Keith Mitchell sold us. He sure did. But hey, that's golf props. What are you going to do about it, right? Guy didn't play to his standards today. What's going on, Antonio? Welcome on in. You said Cam Young looks so bad today. You hope he can bounce back? Yeah, he was super chalky. So I don't know if I hope he bounces back just because I was way under the field on him in my main slate exposure. But you'd have to think, right? These guys, when they kind of struggle one day to the next and they weren't that far off, that they're probably going to at least improve somewhat for tomorrow. So I would say there's a good chance for you sites that he's able to pull that off, especially with the kind of form that he had heading in. He said, did I notice on the broadcast that they showed Svensson switch to the broomstick? I didn't see that, but that is good news or good information, Antonio. So good stuff there. Enrico, by the way, he putted pretty well today with that broomstick putter. So credit where credit's due there. We'll do those later on with the deep dives. He said, you got to imagine Scotty's going to bounce back too. I'm with you on that, Daniel. Can I deep dive Castillo? We for sure will. And he said, was this enough for confidence in Thigala? I don't know, man. It's only one round, and he has had a couple good rounds since he's returned. I wanted at least 2 or 3 good rounds from him before I really go out there, and I support that. But I played him this week, so I used him. I took advantage of it and whatnot. But I'm really hesitant to say that he's back at this point, right? He's losing 3 strokes per round over his last 12 rounds. I used him because of the upside, but if he goes out there and shoots +5 and ends up near the cut line tomorrow, I'm not going to be surprised either. So it's fingers crossed that we're not going to jinx him or anything like that, but he did look damn good out there. And yeah, you're looking at JT2. We'll do those kind of deep dives here in a second. Let's go through the shots gained metrics. So the first thing I do with the round 1 stats when I'm trying to build my player pool is I want to know who was hitting the ball well, because if you talk to any golfer, interviews after the round, all that kind of stuff, they will always tell you that if they're swinging it well, that they're going to be confident. You can see it on their face. And a lot of times putting, they'll chalk up the variance. You'll see, I was hitting good putts all day and they weren't dropping, or, I just wasn't getting anything to drop. But then you'll also hear the flip side of that in players, where after the round, they'll kind of be chuckling to themselves and yeah, everything was just dropping out there. And they'll kind of shrug sometimes to put up their hands and be like, I don't know, I just ended up having a really good day. There is so much truth to that. So that's why you'll see a lot of, touts, a lot of just people in general, when they're looking at golf, really fixate on those ball striking stats, because that is the most reliable part of golf from round to round. On the flip side, around the green and the putting, right? When you kind of flow up your arms like, oh, I don't know what happened. I had a really good day. It's usually because you had a spike around the green or putting. So this can be a lot more variance, not really something you can count on happening from day to day, which is why we focus on the ball striking first. So if you take a look at the players, and ball striking, by the way, is just combining off the tee and approach. It's literally just adding those 2 categories together. A little bit of a shortcut when it comes to looking at those 2 together. McNeely was number 1 in the field. He also lost strokes putting, so we'll get back to that in a second. But you would say that he's a ball striking candidate and a short game regression candidate. Unfortunately, is on the wrong side of the tee times, but there are certain players that I'm making that exception with. And, somebody that's a short game regression candidate and a ball striking popper could very well be one of those players that I do it with. But Nick Hardy also hit the ball well. Sahith Theegala, who we just had the comment about, you can see it right there. Yeah, gained about 3 strokes into the positive on approach. That's very impressive. And he's typically a much better putter than what he showed as well, usually gaining a half a stroke to a stroke per round. Now, it could be some of the rust of not playing all the golf that he typically does. But if he gets back to even a neutral, that is a marked improvement. So yeah, Sahith's usable. I hope that he can continue the form that we've seen, because he's such a great character and such, a lot of people are fans of his game. So I would love to see him get back to that kind of form. Shots gained metrics do look really solid on him. Rico Hoey also hit the ball well, and the short game wasn't that special either. So somebody that could conceivably keep it going tomorrow. Jackson Quaven, he gained across the board except for his around the green play. So this is more of like a traditional shots gained profile, but he did almost gain 4 strokes into the positive ball striking. Peter Malnati at T20, not a name that we were expecting to see here, I'd say. His form's fallen off quite a bit since that win at the Valspar Championship, but he gained about 3.6 strokes ball striking, so that's respectable. A Spawn, a Velo, a Vince Covello. I mean, my goodness, this is a guy who's missed cuts like 90% of the time over the last 2 years. I think he's like 43 or something too. I wouldn't expect that to continue in back-to-back days, but he gained 3 strokes ball striking, which is just kind of mind-blowing if you ask me. Scotty Scheffler, I know we had the comment about him. He gained the ball striking. He lost in the short game categories. That would be a very favorable stat profile there. But Abatia, a Thomas Rosenmuller, a Matt McCarty, all of these players are worthy of some extra attention. Now, to get back to the weather before, I do favor some of these AM wave players. So when I was going through the shots gained metrics and building my player pool, I was really trying to focus on the guys on that side of things. So for example, a Quaven will be in the PM wave. Like, those are guys that I was having to exclude because I would rather take the studs that are on the proper side of things. So like a Scotty, for example, who's AM wave, a JJ Spawn, who will also be in the AM wave, I believe, are the kind of players that I would rather get to. So those are the ball striking stats. And if we go to the putting and the around the green, if we take a look at the guys that gained a whole bunch of strokes in these categories, it is going to be tough to do that in back-to-back days. For example, a Hughes, he may still gain strokes putting, but if he gains over 2 to 3 strokes to the field, I would be rather surprised by that. So I would expect him to probably be closer to a neutral most of the time for round 2. Ben Griffin, a Jim Canals, also a Taylor Montgomery, a McCarty, all of these guys that you see heavily into the dark green are players that you got to take with a grain of salt, right? Like if their ball striking was really good and also they were hot with the short game, you could still use those kind of players, because if they have another hot ball striking day and they're just okay putting, that's still going to be a mighty fine round. You can still totally get by with that in some of your DFS lineups. But if you're looking for the absolute nuts, you normally don't want to be looking at these kind of players. So the round the green's the same thing. If you gained a whole bunch around the green, chipped in once or twice, that is not something that I'm counting on these guys to do in back-to-back rounds. And the flip side is true as well. If you lost a whole bunch of strokes in these two categories and you were good or just okay in the ball striking even, those are guys that I'll give a little bit of leeway to. So for example, Nick Hardy, he was one of the best ball strikers that we had in round one. He lost almost 7 strokes short game. I mean, that is unheard of. That's why he lost over 2 strokes to the field. That would be a short game regression candidate right there. We have also got guys like Taylor Dixon here. He was okay ball striking, lost over 5 strokes short game. And by the way, Dixon's normally a much better short game player. So I'm not playing Dixon, but I was at least looking at him for sure for round number 2. I don't have a ton of short game regression candidates that I actually like. To be honest, I have much less in my player pool than I typically do. You could say McNeely would be an example of that. Quade Cummins as well. He gained ball striking, but lost about 4 strokes in the short game categories. That's how I use that to my advantage. But if you guys remember, and we'll go back to that spreadsheet just in case you're joining us, it's not just the shots gained metrics that we're using for my player pool. I add in things like course history and high upside plays to get me to some of the lower owned players. Because on those shots gained metrics of the guys that were up there at the top, I mean, those are the players that played well today. And golf's a variant sport. We have so much chaos from round to round, so many guys that'll play well and then shitty the next day, that if you're only looking at the round one results, then you're probably going to end up chasing your tail most times, right? You're not always going to get onto the nuts just based on what happened today. You need to expand your process. That's why course history is a good way to round it out. You can look at the putting surface of the week, trying to find guys that are good on bent POA. I mean, there's a million different reasons that you could use for building a player pool. And as long as you are intentional about it and you know why you're using players, I'm not really going to give you too much pushback on any of those reasons. Just don't be picking names out of a hat, right? You shouldn't just be looking at the list on DraftKings going like, oh, I want to play him. Oh, I want to play him. Just put in the extra couple minutes of research that you need to do on all the guys that you're playing and make sure that there's something there, right? And the reason I say that too, especially for a slate like this, is we have 144 damn players to choose from. You have so many choices where you should not just be picking out of a hat. If you put in any effort whatsoever into finding plays, you're going to have more than a big enough player pool. So it's not that hard to do, in my opinion. It does take a little bit of extra effort, but if you do so and you're not just picking names out of a hat and playing against the rest of the field, that extra edge that you're generating will, if you do it properly and you refine your process over time, will be what makes you a winning player long term. So that's the shots gained metrics. That's the talk for building a player pool. Let's go through any specific player pool questions that you got, and then we're going to build one lineup to wrap up the DFS side. But like I said before, we are going to do props just after that. So in 9 minutes is going to be our cutoff time for DFS. So I'm going to go through these questions rather quickly here. So let's get back, make sure we're not going over anything and missing it. So let's see. So a deep dive on Morikawa. You're calling him Moriflava. He played decently today, man. I mean, he was about even with the field. He's T67, so right on that cut line. He gained off the tee, just needs to be better with the iron play, I would say. And him losing a stroke putting is on brand. I mean, he's never the best putter that we have out there. And in fact, if you look at the last 24 rounds, the putter's been super negative. So that's not so much a surprise. The iron play was. So the fact that he was still field average, despite his best part of his game, his iron play not being there, is I actually think a pretty encouraging side of things to come. So, you know, even par is not sexy. It's not going to stand out or anything. But guys like JT at that number, you have a lot of other studs at even par too. Like I think a Burns is -1 or something. I think a lot of people are going to give those players crap and, you know, be like, oh, they had horrible days. They really didn't. They had field average days. It's probably below their standards because they're top tier guys. They expect to probably be a stroke or two better than that most days. But it's also, we shouldn't be crucifying them at the same time, right? They were also half decent. So Morikawa would be one of those players for me. Like he was okay enough. He'll be relatively low owned for Showdown too, that you could use him in your lineups for sure. And yeah, Scotty, just to give my 2 cents on that, man. Scotty Scheffler's shots gained profile, gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, and losing short game is exactly what we want to see. And it's world number 1 as well. So you're not going to get that much pushback from me on a Scotty. He's in my player pool already. Can we deep dive Castillo? We for sure can. I love Castillo. He's one of my favorite players on tour, and he has a favorable shots gained profile. He gained off the tee, gained on approach, and lost in the short game categories, which is exactly what we're looking for. And if memory serves me correctly, he's on the right side of tee times too. So yeah, sign me up for some Castillo tomorrow. Let's see. Yeah, we already went over the Thagala stuff, but I think it's a good trend for sure. JT, a good bounce back for tomorrow. You can have a nuclear hot round if the putter warms up. I mean, you're spot on there. And Justin Thomas, I mean, you've noticed it this year, right? If we've been playing Showdown together, he's had some insane rounds. I mean, I'm talking about record-breaking rounds in round 2 on the PGA Tour. A lot of times, even after him shooting like +3, +4 in round 1, I love Justin Thomas for pretty much every single Showdown slate. And the reason why he's in my personal player pool, it's not these shots gained metrics. The shots gained metrics, by the way, are not terrible. I mean, he gained in 2 of the 3 tee to green categories, and then he lost 1.5 putting. That happens to him, right? He's not a good putter. He has a lot of rounds where he'll lose 1.5 to 2 strokes of the field. I shouldn't say that he's not a good putter. He's been good this year. Last year, the year before that, don't look at the stats, right? One of the worst players that we have on all the tour. But yeah, man, if he can flip that to 1.5 to 2 strokes gained, I mean, that's where he's been for a lot of the year. He's been one of the best putters on tour in 2025. Then that could be massive for him. So I'm using him. He's I believe, number 3 on tour in birdie or better percentage. So that high upside aspect, that high birdie or better percentage is why I'm personally on him there. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one. And he said Svensson gained almost 2 strokes putting as well. It's only 1 round, but very interesting. Yeah, so that would be somebody that could probably come back down to earth. Worth noting, though, that 2 strokes gained isn't as much of an outlier. I mean, especially with the putting, I'm usually looking for 3 strokes plus. The around the green stats, though, anything over 1.5 strokes is what I'm using for that. He said, Old Man Coop's deep dive. Man, he played well today. He loves this course. He's a course history guy. If I've ever seen one before, he did gain 2.5 strokes putting, which, again, it's not a massive outlier when you're gaining close to like 2.5 strokes putting. But the rest of the game was solid. I mean, he gained off the tee, he gained approach. So I don't know if we can hold that against him too much. So yeah, I think he sets up decently for Showdown. The ownership will be there, though. He's not going to be low owned in that range. People know about the course history, and they also know about the fact that he played well today. He said, I was right about Lipsky and Kazire being dog shit. Yeah, hey, it happens, right? I tried to warn you, but it is what it is, right? They played well at this golf course in the past, so I couldn't blame you too much for taking them on those props. He said, do I have any good par 5 scores that underperformed? So do you mean good par 5 scorers? Well, I don't know those off the top of my head, but if I bring up the PGA Tour website here real quick, we can take a look at it. And the scoring poorly part, I guess we'll just have to see. I don't know who scored poorly on the par 5s, if that's what you're asking. But if you're asking about like just in general, we can do that. So number 1 par 5 scorer, Scotty. Okay, pretty normal, I would say, on that one. Let's see who's in the field. Taylor Moore's in the field, but he played like crap. He'll be unowned, though, which could be interesting. Keith Mitchell didn't score on the par 5s today. He's the number 11 par 5 scorer, so you can look at that. Taylor Montgomery, by the way, I said Taylor Montgomery is going to suck, and he shot like -5. So even though I was right about a couple of those other fades, I certainly wasn't right about my guy T. Monty, and I like T. Monty, so I'm okay with him proving me wrong. If it was like a Brian Stewart or something, I'd be a little pissed about it, but not with him. Thorborn Olesen, he kind of just got by today. Michael Thorbjornsen as well is top 15 in par 5 scoring. I'm not against looking at this category just because they have 4 par 5s. Right? It's the par 72 setup, so you're going to have more chances at it. That could be a way to build a player pool for sure. And so you said thoughts on English. He couldn't be any more neutral if he tried to in round 1. Yeah, man, the guys that are neutral across the board are pretty decent options. Like, they're not sexy, right? They're not going to stand out. It's that even par mindset that I was mentioning. I mean, I don't really have anything great to say about him, right? I have to at least admit that, right? It's just kind of like, what do you even say when the guy's about a neutral in every category? But if the ownership is a little bit lower compared to some of the other guys around him, then why not? It's a Showdown format. He's playing well heading into the event. He's on the freaking Ryder Cup team this year because of how well he's played in 2025. No complaints from me if you're going to use him in lineups, especially at low ownership in GPPs. He said, what are my thoughts about the course? You said you love it. It's old school. Yeah, so it's not my favorite, if I'm going to be frank. I do like that it's old school and like Vince Covello can play well, right? There's not many courses where he's going to make the cut and shoot like -3 like he did today. He may have shot even better than -3 when it was all said and done. I like that aspect of it. It makes me feel like I could maybe shoot like an 80 around this kind of golf course, but I prefer Harbor Town to this. Harbor Town has the more trees, it's more angles. This one, you can get away with spraying it if you're lucky. So that's the only gripe I have about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's like a 6 out of 10 golf course, 5 out of 10 golf course. not too many complaints I can give it. But let's build a lineup here together, and then we'll get to the prop side of things. So first things first, when building a lineup, it's just going to be about getting enough differentiation in there. So depending on the contest you're entering, you're going to have to adjust how far you're taking your leverage. Because if you're in a cash lineup, leverage is non-existent, right? You just play the top 6 players, the top projected lineup that you can possibly put together, and you're trying to finish in the top 50%. But if you're in GPPs, like let's say a single entry or one of the smaller GPPs, you've got to start to think about ownership because it's top heavy. It's the GPP price structure. You're trying to finish in the top 5 or the top 1% to really get the money. So in those contests, you have to think about leverage, but you're not worried about duplication so much in those contests because you're only playing against a couple hundred entries most of the time. And if you're only playing against like a couple hundred entries, your chance of duplicating is extremely low, especially before the cut line at one of these tour events. But if you're in like the big $5 or the big $25 150 max, your mindset changes even more, right? Because not only are you even more so worried about leverage because you've got to beat more entries now, but now duplication is a legit worry because if you're in a contest with, I don't know, 8 to 15,000 plus entries, you're going to have 10, 20, even 100 times the chance of duplicating yourself as compared to some of those smaller contests. So that's why your mindset has to shift based on the contest that you're entering. And just for the sake of making this more interesting with the lineup construction, we're going to do it for the large field GPP. So we're going to assume that we're playing in like the big $5 or $25 where we've really got to push it to its max. So first things first up top, you've got to decide whether you want Scotty Scheffler or you're going to go with a more balanced approach. Just like main slate, if you use a Scotty Scheffler who does set up well for round 2, it forces you to a very cheap lineup construction. I mean, if you throw him in there up top, it puts you to about $7,100 remaining per player, which has a lot of opportunity cost, right? You can't play a lot of these 8, 9K players, but it does simplify getting different because it forces you to take 2, maybe even 3 players in that 6K range, at least 2, but maybe even 3 in that range. They're going to easily be sub 5% owned. So if you're looking to get different, you plug in those sub 3%ers and then you're fine. The rest of your lineup, you can even use some chalk if you want to at 1 or 2 of those other spots. But if you don't take a Scotty Scheffler, it gets a lot harder because then you have to worry about your 8 and your top end of the 7K range guys and the kind of ownership that they bring to the table. So let's do that just because it's a little bit harder to build those lineups. So in this 9K range, you might be tempted, or even like a 10K Russell Henley, might be tempted to take some of the guys that played really well today. Not only are you going to have to share them with more people, but it's going to start to condense and pigeonhole us a bit when it comes to the ownership later on. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go with the Justin Thomas instead. And I like the St. Burns as well. High upside player. He's also top 5 or top 10, I should say, in birdie or better percentage. Either way you want to go about it, I'd be okay for this slate. But let's use him there. Second man in, let's go with the JJ Spawn. Decent course history, also an AM Wave player. And now we still have $7,700 remaining, which is why we have to be a bit more careful about it. Because at this stage, maybe we have to take like 1 6K range guy to round off this kind of lineup, which means we're going to have some, top into the 7K range and 8K range players. They're carrying some ownership if we're not careful. So let's go in here and throw in an English, we'll say. I'm okay with the play. I think let's check the tee time actually. Let's make sure that he's AM Wave. What's the best way to do that? I guess let's go over here to pjtour.com. Just check it that way, the old fashioned. Okay, here's English. He is going off, in the morning. So we could use him in this sort of lineup. So let's throw him in there at $8,800. In the 7K range, this is where we have to start to try and get a little bit different. I like the idea of a Beau Hossler. He's got solid course history. Also going to be low owned because he's over par after the first round. So it's $7,700. Maybe it makes some sense in terms of differentiation. In this middle tier range, you kind of want to stay away from a Thagala because he's going to be chalky and we already have to start thinking about our differentiation because we're in that large field GPP. So, if you're going to use a Thagala, maybe you have to take a pivot towards the top or maybe even 2 pivots towards the top to make that thing work. Or if you did want to throw in a Thagala, maybe that means you have to leave some salary on the table to make sure that you're not going to duplicate yourself. So it's all about just giving and taking with the ownership. If you're going to take a high owned player at one spot, you've got to really try and force in something low owned elsewhere. But if we don't go with a super chalky guy like Thagala, or maybe somebody more reasonable, let's say like a Tom Hoagie, then maybe you could use all $7,200 for your last man in. So that's the idea with lineup construction. It's just trying to find that fine balance. And like I said, you cater it to the contest that you're entering, because if you're in some of the smaller field contests, then you don't have to worry nearly as much about that kind of ownership angle. So that's it for the DFS side, guys. I will go over any last second questions that you might have on that. That's going to be prop props from here on out. So we're going to go through stat averages for the Procore and BMW PGA, as well as some underdog and price pick stuff, which I wasn't sure if they had boards posted quite yet. I'm hoping they do. I'm assuming at some point, yeah, it looks like underdogs got us covered. I'm not sure when price picks is going to give us those to go through. If not, we'll just go through the underdog stuff. So hit me up with any last second DFS questions that you guys have. Then we'll move into props over here. Let's see. So thoughts, or did the English thoughts. He said thoughts. Thought this was going to be a replay. Should have known that you would have been out here grinding. Yeah, man, it probably would have been a replay a lot of times, right? You see it pop up on the YouTube feed. You're like, oh, it's probably the round one stuff. No, it's round two, man. It's late. I'm feeling it. I have to admit, I woke up at 7:30 a.m. So I am absolutely cooked right now. But we're almost to the end of it. So we've survived this long. He said, thoughts on Ben? He gained almost 4 strokes putting. You're looking at the under on the round score. Yeah, the putting's a bit of a red flag, but the ball striking was solid too. So he's one of the examples of somebody that I could see having a solid round after still gaining those strokes putting. But I don't think he's going to have a nutted round again, right? I'm not expecting him to shoot like another -6 because he's not. Let's be honest, right? He's not going to gain 4 strokes putting every single day. It's just not going to happen. But to cover a 69.5 line and shoot -3, you don't have to gain all those kind of strokes. So I'll have to look at the lines, Antonio. I haven't looked at any props so far. So I want to see where they have the rest of the board priced before I really give you my full take on that. Because there might be better players, right? At 69.5 that you can play. And then let me know what kind of odds you're getting too, because I'm assuming it's even money if you didn't give me the odds. But that could change that as well. And he said he completely thought Lanto Griffin was on the tour. I know. I agree with you on that one, man. He hasn't been around for a while. Him shooting -7 is just wild. Alrighty. By the way, I'm going to give myself 10 seconds here to see if Terry McLaurin went over his receiving yard line for me. I'm assuming he didn't because he needed to get like 30 yards in the last 10 minutes of the game. But I wasn't able to track it when I was playing over here doing this live stream. So let me see if he pulled through. That'd be pretty sweet. Oh, he missed by 4.5 yards. Unfortunate. He at least made a run at it, right? He wasn't doing jack shit throughout the entire game and then got to 48 yards. Can't be too upset about that one. Let's go through some prop stuff here. So first things first, golf course was slightly harder this year than what we had historically. And a lot of people thought it was going to play easier because they flanned out some tee boxes. They also wind up a couple fairways, but the course was playing firmer and faster than what we normally see. This time of year, it's not like it's soft in Napa, but it's normally not bouncy like you had on the greens. And if you guys were watching some of the featured groups, like especially Scotty Scheffler, he was getting frustrated with the big bounces that he was getting. He was hitting it like literally a couple feet from the pin, and he was bouncing like 20 to 25 feet past. So these players have to make that adjustment, particularly if you're not used to playing in Napa this time of year. So I think that had a lot to do with the stroke average. And then something else that we had no idea of yesterday, right? Pin locations weren't even out. The pins were hard as fuck. They were tucked on the par 5s. They were back pins in almost every single case. And there were some easy par 4 pins. Like one of them, it was 8, I believe, was like in a bowl, probably the easiest pin location that you could get at that hole. But there were enough harder pin locations, especially on the easier holes. And I think that led into the scoring as well. So tomorrow morning, when winds are going to be low and it will be a little bit cooler, but it's going to be ideal from the wind perspective, I think the scoring average is going to be at least -0.5. Part of that has to do with the higher talent level as well. The guys in the morning are better than some of the PM wave players, but also the fact that I think the pin locations will be easier. Now, we don't have the pin locations quite yet, or at least we didn't have them before the live stream. Let me actually just bring up Twitter and see if they've posted them, because they were such a big factor for round one that I would like to go through them before we start entering any props. And they actually do have them up here. It's not going to help my case for getting to sleep earlier. Going through these pin locations, but you know what? It's worth going through because they could really make a big difference here for tomorrow. So we're going to go through these. We're going to see if they're any different compared to today, because easy pin locations could be up to a stroke difference from round to round. So a lot of times that, presents us an edge for going out there and trying to enter these things. So let's do it that way. You're so tempted to run back Mitchell after he sold. Yeah, I know it was your idea, right, Noah? You're the one who gave us Mitchell. So, hey, you let us know. If you want to go back to it, I might be with you on it. I have no idea. I'm assuming he's at 4. If you're saying you'll run it back, let me know, man. I'm not too against that. That's for sure. You said, thanks for doing this and sweating DFS with the sweaty tryhards. Of course, you said you're late and you have to teach tomorrow. I get that. And hey, best of luck with all of that. Dealing with, I don't know who you teach, if they're young knuckleheads or older knuckleheads, but good luck with that. You said RP Terry, but it cashed the taco. There you go. And yeah, man, kind of annoying that he got 4 yards short, but I thought he was cooked. Like I frankly didn't think we had a chance at it. So the fact that he even made it close was good. He said Prize Picks isn't live on PGA yet. Yep, saw that. They'll give it to us soon, I would assume, though, unless their lines makers already asleep. He said, what price do I need to be getting to take an outright on Scotty? Yeah, you saying plus 500 seems too short. It probably is because he's starting at that point, but he is the kind of player that is just going to continually move up that leaderboard throughout the week. I'd say like plus 600, maybe like, I don't know, plus 650. I would bet him at this point, but even plus 500, I mean, there's no value on that. I'm not trying to say that like it's like a plus EV lean on that, but even that's like a decent lean on Scotty Scheffler. Like he's in prime position. He's within striking distance of getting to the top 25. Yeah, plus 650 though feels a little bit better about that. Let's see. Noah, you don't have to put those kind of comments in chat. I'm just going to delete it and not even talk about it. Bro, just leave it alone, bro. You're annoying as fuck sometimes. He said Washington offense was stifled tonight. Packers are legit. Yeah, I was happy about that in the lineups that I stacked for the Packers. I had some Jacobs captain lineups, some Jordan Love exposure out there as well, and completely faded Jaden Reed tonight. So I was happy about that. Lucky, of course. I mean, I'll count my lucky stars that he ended up getting injured on what would have been a touchdown. But you take your luck when you can get it, right? Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good sometimes. Let's go through this. So hole number 1, we've gotten this middle right side over here. So it's about right here. I would say that it's slightly harder than today's pin location. So this will be one of the examples of one that could get slightly more difficult, but it is going to depend on the wind direction as well, because this was a hole that was directly downwind, and this kind of back pin location, you had a lot of people going over the back. So this front left pin location, or front right pin location, I should say, isn't one that's going to be super easy, but it's, I don't know, it's not going to be that much harder either, I would say. It's probably going to be about the same if I had to guess. Let's go to hole 2. 2 is on the front left side. This is an easier pin than today. Pin location today actually doesn't look that bad, but the angle from this tee box over here really brought that bunker into play. So now that it's over here on this left side of things, you do have this bunker, but it's a shorter shot in. This was tipped out as well. So if we go back to the tee box, you'll see that it was as back as they could furthest take it. So toward this front left side, it'll play at least 15 yards shorter, if not even shorter than that, if they move up a tee box. And what I'll say too is what you get from the PGA Tour on these setups is if it plays slightly harder than normal the first day, a lot of times they'll compensate for that and try and change that for the day after that. So they'll, move up some tee boxes. They'll make the pin locations a little bit easier. So that's part of the reason too why I think it's going to trend in that direction. Let's go to hole 3 next. So hole 3 is in the very back right corner. Jesus Christ. If I could click on the right tab, that would really help our case here. So it's about right here. I would say a slightly harder pin location just because it's a longer shot in. So that theory I had about them making the pins easier is so far not looking like the case. So it's a good thing we're checking this, right? 4 is on the front left side over here. This is an easier pin than today. It's you got a little bit more of a backstop. You can see that sloping right there. That'll help you get it closer to the hole. So 4 is probably going to be one of the easiest holes on the golf course, I'd say. 5 is the shortest par 5, is also an easier pin. It was in the very back left. And this is what I meant about the par 5s. They tucked them and they put them at the hardest possible spots that they possibly could. Over here in the middle right, it's an easier chip. It's a shorter shot in as well. So this 3.65 birdie average that we were showing on here before, I think could go up quite a bit. So this bogey average might not move that much, but a birdie average, at least if these par 5s and this kind of trend holds up, that could go up to 4 per round if they're a little bit more accessible. Let's go to the next hole. So 6 is going to be a front left pin location. That is going to be about where my cursor is right now. So it's a shorter shot in, but I actually don't think it's that much easier than what we had for today, just because today you did have some side slope that was going to help you out. And today you have this little knob that's going to kind of make balls bounce away. It's a high spot. You can see the sloping to the right. That's going to take balls that are a little bit right of the flag to the right. And then if you land it just past pin high, there's a downslope there as well. So that's probably going to be about the same difficulty as today. Next up, we have 7, which is in the front middle portion of the screen. It's about where my cursor is now. It's an easier shot. It's a shorter shot, but it is a smaller portion of the green complex. So I think you'll see more birdies at 7, but also slightly more bogeys because the green and regulation rate will go down. Next up, we have 8, which is in the back left corner. This is a harder pin location than today. So yeah, I mean, I actually think it looks pretty flat compared to round 1 so far. The birdie average might go up on the par 5s, but some of these par 4 pins look a little trickier. 9 is on the middle left over here. This is an easier pin location, a shorter shot and towards the broad side of the green. Next up, we have 10. So if you're starting on number 10, you're getting a back left pin location. It's probably about the same as today, so that won't change too much from rounds 1 to 2. 11 next, we have a back middle pin location. This is a par 3. This was one I believe they tipped out, but let's double check that. Yeah, they did. They used it from the very back tee box. So there's a chance they move it up. And I would say there's especially a chance that they move it up here at 11 because this is a tough pin. You've got the slope towards the middle of the green, which will bisect it and take everything towards the front side, which is missed a little bit short. So if they tip it out, this will be maybe the hardest hole that you have on the golf course. But if they move it up a tee box and it plays 150, this could be one of the easier holes that you have on property. So when I wake up tomorrow and they end up doing lock at 10 a.m. and we get the shot tracker to update, I'll be keeping an eye on where that tee box is. And just to show you guys how that works, 1 second while I bring up the PGA site, I want to show you where you can actually see the tee box when they update it on shot tracker, because as soon as they lock, you're going to be able to see this. So let me share my screen. I'll show you guys this. There we go. So you'll see on 11, for example, it's in the very back middle. You can see that right there, right? Like it's on the very back spot. If tomorrow you wake up after lock, and it has to be after the first player hits their first tee shot, if they have this white bubble up here, that hole is going to play a whole lot easier than what it did for today. Let's go to 12 next. So 12 is a middle left pin location. This is also easier than today. By the way, this is another one of the par 5s that was a hard pin. This pin's going to be a lot more accessible. Let's go to 13 next. So 13 is in a back middle. This looks like an easier pin. So actually, I take that back. This was one of the par 4s that was in the bowl that I was mentioning before. So this pin location will be a bit harder, but in the very center of a green is as easy as it gets as well. So I think it's only going to be slightly harder than today. And this was a hole when I was, heading into looking at these pin locations, and I thought was going to be significantly harder because this was such an easy pin location today. But a middle pin like you have there at 13 is so extremely rare on the PGA Tour. Next up, we have 14, which is in the front middle almost. It's slightly towards the right side. That's an easier pin than today for sure. Today, it was up on the back right corner over a bunker, and you had all that slope to work with. So this back 9 looks a whole of a hell lot easier, actually, compared to the front side. 15 is also a shorter pin location. Par 5, it was in the very back middle. Towards the front, it is tricky chipping out of this bunker, right? Because you're short-sided, but any other chip's going to be easier to this pin than what it was for today. 16 is, so it's a medium length par 4, middle right pin. This looks a little harder than today. So one of the few pins on the back side that looks a little trickier. 17, the par 3 is a front left pin location. They actually moved up the tee here a bit. So we'll show that here in a second. But this pin location is way, way easier. It's not as long. It's not as protected by that bunker on that right side. But the tee box, it must be noted, this is one that was moved up slightly. So for example, if we go to 17, just to show you what that looks like, it's at the front of this box, right? You can see that white little dot over there. Very likely it's going to be towards the back, but it'll probably still play to the same distance, right? Because that distance there will be maybe a little bit less of a change than what it'll be from going from there to over there. And let's finally go to 18. So the last hole is another par 5. And just like all the other par 5s, and now we have to go back to the birdie average after this because it's the same with all of them. This is an easier pin location. It's a much easier chip from this front right quarter. Even if you miss over here to the front left of the screen, it's a relatively simple up and down. This was a longer chip and a longer shot into the green. So to go back to the averages and kind of correct ourselves on that, I think that that minus 0.5 scoring average probably makes sense now. Even though the front 9 was kind of tricky in spots, back 9 is definitely easier than what it was for today. So that birdie average should go up a little bit. Now, the question is how much, right? Is it going to go up to 3.75 or 4+ per round, like what we saw last year? I think it's somewhere in that range, right? Can't give you guys an exact answer. I can't narrow it down quite that much, but something between 3.75 to 4 per round wouldn't surprise me in the least. So that will slightly impact the stroke average. But to go back to the bogey or worse and whatnot, I don't think that's going to move much at all. You have enough tricky pin locations that's not going to change. And then them changing the par 5 pins to make them easier, that's not going to soften up the bogeys on those holes, right? Not not many bogeys are being made on par fives on the PGA Tour. So I don't think that that's going to make a very big difference. So the big differences from round 1 to round 2, in my opinion, in terms of setup, will be the birdie or better average on those par fives. Fairways should not move much at all, maybe 0.1 or 0.2 in either direction at the very most, probably less than that in most cases. And then your green average, that probably won't move very much as well, right? Even though the birdie average was a little bit lower today than what we normally see on the par fives, the green average wasn't, right? People were still hitting the greens. It's just that they had longer putts because the chips and the iron shots were a little bit more difficult. So that's how I think things are going to move from day to day. Worth noting that the BMW PGA Championship, they did not have lines posted for that before, probably because play was suspended for overnight play. But if you are entering on any sports books or any smaller sites that do have those available, you can see those averages towards the bottom. A minus 1.38 average over there for the BMW PGA Championship and a 4.33 birdie or better average. So again, kind of annoying that they don't have those up on there, but let's get to some PGA props on Prize Picks now. So let me refresh Underdog. Let's refresh Prize Picks too to make sure we have all the up-to-date lines. Let's find some value. So I only have birdie matchups up on Prize Picks, so we're going to go back to that after they add on to the board, and we'll focus on the Underdog side first. Let's see where we leave off. He said, Morikawa bounce back day tomorrow. Let's get it. I could see it. I mean, the shots gained profile looks like it could be there. And yeah, it's only birdie or better matchups. So we're going to have to wait on that one. It's the matchups. Yep. They're all baiting us, right? And by the way, those matchups, they suck. Birdie or better matchups are like the worst category. So you guys got to wait on jumping the gun there. He said, McCarty over under 70.5 and both sides are minus 110. He said he knows a later tee time, but you love the number. Yeah. Let's go back to the averages too. Let me show you guys on Data Golf. Because I know actually, if you were here earlier for the DFS section, you already saw this. And I just realized I didn't need to bring up another tab. We already had it up. I'm so used to having the separate live streams. I thought we'd have to bring this up again. It was easier in the morning than the afternoon, but it was only a 0.2 shot difference, right? So like prop wise for the guys in the afternoon, it's really not that big of a deal. So yeah, 70.5 to shoot -2. You know I love McCarty. I bet I'm outright this week. The only thing, if I was going to be nitpicky about it, if I had to like give him like one reason why it's not a great play, did I spell his name wrong? It's McCarty, not McCarthy. Jesus. Is he gained 5-stroke short game, right? That's just not something you can normally do in every single round there. Golly, you can tell it's late. I'm typing McCarthy instead of McCarty. He's the guy I bet outright this week. Like, come on, Luke, get your shit together. But let's do this. So let's see where they have this board price. It looks similar to round 1 so far. There's no strokes lines posted, which is very strange if you ask me. But let's look at birdies or better and see where they have this board. If JT was at 4.5, I was going to nuke that over. But it looks like the same exact players that they had at 4.5, they have at that number again. I see a prop that I know I'm already going to take 100%, but I am really worried that it's going to bump. So you know what we're going to do? Is we're going to find something to mix in with it before I tell you guys what that prop is, because there is something on the board there that should not be there, at least in my opinion. I want to look at the sportsbook odds real quick. And I'm not going to tell you the odds, and I'm going to try and make it not obvious who it is, because again, the lines makers watch these live streams. It's like a well-known established fact at this point. Let's see. Okay. All right. I saw the player I needed to, and the odds are great on it. So let's find something to pair up with it. And I apologize that I have to do that, guys. Well, I mean, I'll give you the whole reasoning and whatnot when we get to it. But literally, people in this live stream will watch it. They'll bump it live. It's crazy what these motherfuckers do sometimes. But let's see what we have on here. So I kind of want to look at greens and reg, just because it was a lot firmer this year. And I guess they're not letting us search by greens and reg quite yet. But you can see Morikawa's at that 13.5 mark. So I'm wondering where they have some of the other guys here, especially like some of the mid to lower tier players. Fairways could also be a category that we look at. Fairway average was about 7 per round. So there could be some fades that could make sense on guys that maybe aren't as accurate. And the average did go up from the year before. It was 6.5 in 2024. So it was 7 per round today. That was a bit of an improvement. So for some of these guys at 7.5, actually, I thought I wanted to look at fades, but retrospectively, now looking at these guys at 7.5, like a McNeely, Ben Griffin's not like the worst accuracy driver that I've ever seen. There could be some value in that direction as well. So you know what we're going to do? Let's go to stats. Let's go to off the tee. Let's try and line shop who some of the more accurate players are in this field. And I guess let's line shop McNeely first. He's not that accurate, huh? Yeah, number 95 on tour, slightly worse than average. Yeah, that's not really what we want. Cantlay is going to be the same way, huh? Let's see. Yeah, Cantlay is number 81, so slightly better than average. Okay. And I think Griffin's the same way as well. Let's see. So yeah, Ben Griffin's number 92. So maybe they're not as good of value as I thought they were going to be, but gaining one fairway to the field is pretty reasonable if we can find somebody that's better than the average. Yeah, McNeely's not going to cut it. Rico Hoey he's been pretty accurate this year, huh? It's kind of surprising because he hits the ball a mile, but what is he on fairway average? Number 13. Jeez Louise, that is Rico Hoey, if he can find a putter, is going to be a special talent because it's rare to have that kind of distance and accuracy. Let's look at Ben Griffin is who we're looking for here. Not Ben Griffin, Lanto Griffin, actually. Lanto is number 51 in driving accuracy. If he was at 8.5, I would probably take that under. And I'm looking for a couple of fades here just because if we take a fade alongside a positive stance play, the play that I like is a positive stance play, then we'd get a slightly boosted payout. But I'm not going to marry myself to trying to boost the payout for no reason. We can obviously pivot if we need to. They do have a lot of these green and red guys up here at like 12.5. The only concern I have is that tee box on like some of the par threes maybe being moved up. That could help out players. Let's look at Griot's fairway percentage. I think it's pretty good. Yeah, 15 on tour. Yeah, forget it. Yeah, we're not going to fade him on fairways then. Akshay is a pretty good fairway hitter as well. So yeah, maybe the unders on fairways just aren't really priced for it at this stage. Let's look at I wish we could search by greens. It would make our life so much easier here. Let's go to the approach profile. Let's bring up green regulation percentage. And let me do a couple searches here. So Mackenzie Hughes is not very good at hitting greens. That could be a spot to fade. But who else is on the board here at 12.5? There were some scrubs down here that I really wanted to eye up. So Alanto Griffin could be one. We'll line shop him. Then who else? Not a Cam Young. I'm not fading him. Not fading McCarty. He's my boy this week. Let's anyone else other than Griffin that we should look at? So Lanto is number 93, so he's a little bit better in that category. And just because I'm curious, sportsbook line value, I've been starting to use a whole lot less these days. So it's not really going to impact my process too much. Yeah, slightly juiced towards the over. I don't agree with that, but okay. It's at least worth noting, I guess. And then Lanto Griffin's minus 130 towards the over as well. I mean, how do they figure that? Both of those players are average at best at hitting greens, and the average was like 11.89 per round. I kind of wish that they had a multiplier towards the under or something. Like maybe some slap dicks out there will bet they're over. Seeing that like minus 130 juice, and then we can get like a 1.02 to 1.05x multiplier towards the under. That at even money, there's probably not that big of an edge on that prop, or at least there could be a bigger edge. So maybe we should hold off until that's potentially the case. Some of these 13.5s are even fadeable, like a Spawn, some of the other guys at even some of the elite tier guys at that number. But I would rather fade a scrub than somebody that's a legit, prospect, somebody that could legit take down this tournament. Any other fairways or any other green lines that we're hiding here towards the bottom? It doesn't look like it. So, we could just go to positive stance plays. That is an option here. And I guess I'll just point out the play that I know I want to take. It's a Sam Burns over on birdies. I just don't get it. If all these other guys are going to be juiced towards the over at 4.5, Sam Burns a top 5 birdie maker, then I don't understand why they have the other ones juiced towards the over and this one's not. So Sam Burns is going to be the prop that we're definitely mixing in. It's just trying to find something that's a good pair, and nothing is really immediately standing out. I'm sure if we go through this enough, we'll be able to find something to play. But those fairway lines, they just don't have enough posted, right? If they had more options for unders on fairways, I'm sure we'd be able to find somebody that would make sense. But as is, I just don't see it. And the reason why I'm not going to the 7.5s and now taking their under, right? We were shopping them for the over before, is they're not the worst players. I mean, they're the best players that we have in this field, right? And they're also players that don't have to hit driver around this place. They're, in general, players that are relatively long off the tee. Would not surprise me if they laid up and hit more fairways than the field average. So that's why I'm not as thrilled about that. We could go an under on birdies, but going back to the averages, right? We think it's going to be an easier setup on the par fives. So I don't really like the idea of going out there and just fading players, especially when I think it might be an easier setup for tomorrow. If we wanted to go with 2 overs on birdies, I mean, look at the payout. It's just utter shit. So like a Morikawa, for example, and by the way, the odds on Burns are like minus 135 towards the over. So that's what I was looking at on that one before. But Morikawa's minus 125 over, so slightly worse value. The problem is that the payout is absolute shit. So I keep going back here to Prize Picks to see if they post the rest of their board so we can see if they maybe have guys like Burns and Morikawa at that number. But that's why I'm trying to find something else to mix in with it. So let me see. Chat, have any ideas of stuff to enter? Let's see. Maybe leave off. Afternoon wave for fairway unders. I don't think that the wave really matters for the fairway stuff. Like it'll get slightly drier in the afternoon, but that would be like a 0.1 difference between the 2 waves. So I wouldn't incorporate that one too much. It'd be more so important for the birdie and strokes lines, I'd say, that you're looking at that stuff. Would it be batshit crazy to bet Scotty under 67.5 plus 110? I don't think that's crazy. It's world number 1. I will say, though, that gaining 4 strokes to the field, shooting 67 is a big ask in most tour events for him. Like it's a signature field event, a major. I would not be saying that that's okay, right? Because, you know, my whole thing is always like, how many shots gained do we need to get to score that, right? And it's 4 shots gained. 4 shots gained in a major championship field is going to happen for just a handful of guys. But in a field like this that is so weak, it is viable. So I would, I'd say with plus money, plus 120, plus 125, I'd definitely be behind that kind of thing. You're looking at Akshay for an under. He's somebody that's actually pretty accurate. So if we go to these averages, we have what greens up here right now. Let's go back to the off the tee stuff. Akshay is a relatively accurate player. So I just, maybe that's why he's not the best fade. He was at 7.5. Let me double check on that before I give the wrong thing. Yeah, he's at that 7.5. Yeah, I probably wouldn't take him for an under. He said there's a lot of great player stroke lines at 69.5 and 70.5. Yeah, they have no strokes lines on underdog. So that kind of sucks. Because, dude, if I could enter some 70.5s on legit players, I would. It's just that for whatever reason, underdog isn't posting for them for us this time. It's the, yeah, still nothing posted with the strokes. Makes you wonder why that's the case. He said, I know I don't like the birdie or better matchups. Yeah, I don't. But you think that you've got some good ones on there? Oh, God. I'll look at them, man, but I don't know. They're never really that good, if I'm going to be frank. And I guess let me give the spiel on it, right? Because this is something I've talked about a lot, but I know there's some new people here, so I'm willing to say it again. The reason why these matchups suck are the 0.5s. The 0.5 makes a much bigger difference than a normal 0.5 does, because with these birdie or better lines, tying is a very, very common occurrence, right? It's not like a strokes line where there's a lot more variance involved. Like the strokes range will be anywhere between like -6 to +8 on a day, or -8 to +8, like you saw for scores today. The birdie or better difference is much, much smaller. I mean, it's like between 2 and 10 for all the players. And realistically, for most of the field, it's between like 3 to 6 for like 75% of people that are going to play, which means your tie equity on these matchups can be 10 to 25% at times. Like if you've got 2 players that are really close in talent level, they're going to push close to a third of the time. And with this 0.5, that means that the under is going to hit. So when I'm looking at these birdie or better matchups, the value is 99% of the time on an under, which is why I stay away from them. Because, I mean, you're talking about slapdick players, right, as they have for the under. That's why I'm a little hesitant about it. But I will at least take a look at these just in case. They do post some that are mispriced every once in a while. I mean, we saw it last night with the Fitzy prop that we took, right? It was the Fitzpatrick versus Horschel. He wiped his ass. I mean, he won 8-2 or something like that. So there are times when it makes sense. But like Salinda makes a decent amount of birdies. Hisatune, he's not really a high birdie percentage guy, but he played really well today. So that kind of form is a bit scary. Fishburne has the elite tier course history, so he's not really somebody that I'm looking to go against. Yeah, I mean, maybe an under actually on Homa versus Tom Kim. That might be one of the only ones on here I would play. It would be the less actually that I like on that combination, but it's tough. They're, in my opinion, they're sucker bets. Just because of the way that they price them. A lot of people don't know how the 0.5 works, and they have to be a money maker for Prize Picks because of that. He said Mav hit 16 greens today. Maybe that's why. Oh, makes sense. And honestly, what are you even referring to with Mav? I'm sure it was something that I was talking about like a couple minutes ago, right? Let's see. Now, I have no idea what you're referring to. I guess you'll have to let me know, man. He said, what is my take on Hoey Cole and Meissner 3-ball? Let's look at the odds, because actually, just let me know the odds, right? I don't want to go fishing around for those as we're going through the prop board here. If you let me know the odds, I'll be able to give you my take on that. Without the odds, though, if we're just looking at those 3 players and their talent level, I mean, Hoey's going to be the favorite. I mean, we know that before even looking at the odds. I don't know if I love it. Depends on what the odds are. You're going to have to let me know, man. I was going to try and give you some analysis there, but truthfully, it depends on the number that you're getting. But let's try and find a pairing over here for Sam Burns. So Sam Burns, I already know I want to back. High birdie percentage player, aggressive, morning tee time. It's checking a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for. It's just such a shame that, first off, Prize Picks hasn't posted their entire board yet. And then Underdog's sitting over here not posting strokes lines. It's just, I don't know, makes you wonder. Makes you wonder if they're watching the live stream, just trolling me like, oh, we'll wait until Luke finishes his live stream to post it. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. So I'm okay taking that under on Mackenzie Hughes, right? If you go back to that, I think of anything that I've seen here so far, that's probably the favorite lean, at least for a fade that I've seen so far. And just to go back to the reasoning on that, he was like, what, number 140 something on tour, 130 something on tour at hitting greens. The average was 11.89 per round. Let's say they do move up a tee box or two and it gets slightly easier. I think that's at least a possibility. Maybe it goes up to like 12 per round. But somebody like Hughes, who's number 132 on tour hitting greens, that feels like a spot where we could take a stance against the rest of the field. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to enter this one here for 3.12x, and I'll max it out for the 25 I can. That's where they have my limit here on this main account. So might as well go out there and take as much advantage of it as we possibly can. And with that over a 3x payout, we're obviously getting that anti-correlation boost, which I don't even think there's that much anti-correlation here. Like, sure, one's a positive stance play, one's a negative stance play, but the birdie average and green averages aren't necessarily one-to-one tied, right? We went through the pin locations before, and I kind of gave you an idea for why that was the case. And if you guys remember, it's because the par fives are set up easier. The average on the greens on the par fives is literally not going to change. It's going to be the exact same. Almost everyone should be hitting the greens on the par fives, right? You have 3 damn shots to get there. If you don't, you're a complete slapdick. But the birdie average is going to change with them being much easier pin locations, which is why I like the extra boosted payout here, because it's not like I'm taking 2 leans that are contradictory to each other, right? That's not really what's happening, or at least it's not as much as what it could be. And I think there's value on those 2 leans there. So we're going to take those 2. One of them was plus EV. The Mackenzie Hughes one was not, but I frankly just don't give a fuck. These DraftKings lines makers don't know what they're talking about 99% of the time. And it's why we've been profitable against them for the last 3 years. And today, just for the full transparency, right? I told you guys, we're always going to have the transparency on the live streams. We went 0-2 on our slips today, right? Unfortunate, we did end up into the negative, but that's going to happen at times, right? You're not always going to profit on these slates, and that's why I stick to the process. That's why I don't ever overreact to the kind of news or the kind of play that we had the day before. It's like you have that one guy in chat who's like, oh, Mitchell sold. Do we go back to him? I don't think that really matters at all, right? Whether he sold or whether he made 10 birdies today, right? Shouldn't make that much of a difference. It's more so just about entering props that are checking all the fundamentals that we're looking for and finding and grinding out value that way. But we'll see if Prize Picks will post a board here in the next few minutes. Let's go through that matchup. So we had that 3-ball. Now I'll go through it now that we got through some of that stuff. You may have already thrown the odds in chat, actually. So let's see if you did. Because if you did, we'll just do it that way. See, JT makes a shit ton of birdies. He for sure does. You're looking at the thoughts on English for the under on birdies. Only made 2 today. Don't use that kind of analysis, bro. The last part I like. You said he was losing in most categories. That part of that I like, Noah. If you're looking at today, he made 2 birdies and you think that has any bearing on round 2, you're sorely mistaken. That's just not how golf works. It's like saying this guy had 40 passing attempts in week 1 of the NFL, so he's going to go for 40 in week 2. That's nonsense, right? It depends on game script. It depends on whether they're leading or playing from ahead, the type of defense and the play calling that they're going with. NFL is a bit more complicated than golf, I will admit, but it's the same aspect here, right? Like it's just one performance from one day to the other should not have that much of a bearing on your process. Now, when we get to Sunday and we have 3 full rounds of data to work with, it's a little different. You can start to incorporate it at that point, but just 18 holes, that isn't something I would lean into too much. It's worth noting, though, that he was about a neutral in those 4 categories. So you're right, he did lose in 3 of the 4 categories, but it was like 0.1 strokes to the field. So he was realistically about average in all 4 categories. I think he sets up decently for round 2. So he's not one of the players I'd be really looking to fade. There are guys like a Homa. There are other like middle tier guys like a Grazerman at 4.5 that I would much rather fade that are in the PM as opposed to an English who I also think is AM wave. So there are a couple reasons why I probably wouldn't go to that one. You're looking at Morikawa versus Spawn for round 2. I think that even money on those 2 is pretty close to a perfect price because Morikawa is the better long-term player, but Spawn's playing much better golf right now. So that neutralizes a bit in either direction. And at least with my handicapping process, it's hard for me to really split hairs between those 2 players. And with the -110 line, right, we've got to remember that you're eating juice on that, right? It's not a true +100 that you're entering. If it was a +100 on one of those 2 players, I would take the +100 and just call it a dart throw, right? And I wouldn't think that there's a lot of plus EV or anything on that sort of lean. But at -110, you're falling into a bit of a trap there. You're paying the juice on it for something that I think is a +100 sort of outcome. So I would stay away from that one personally. He said, you missed the old days when you could push birdie matchups. Me too, man. That's when they actually had value. When that push becomes a loss, it kind of changes the whole dynamic. I said Mav Greens were juiced towards the over on the sports book. Oh, okay. So I get what you were saying there. Yeah, he's I would say at 13.5, an elite tier player like a Justin Thomas and Morikawa should easily be juiced towards the over. In fact, you might want to go back and look at some of those elite tier guys. So Cole's +225, Hoey +137, and Meissner +175. So, we'll get a sip of water and ponder on that one. So Hoey has the best projection out of those 3 players. Let's start there. So I agree that with the fact that he should have the best odds out of those 3 options. However, +137 on Hoey, I'll never play. There's no chance in hell. In a 3-leg matchup that I'm going to play him at less than +150. He's just not that guy, right? He's a lower tier player for a reason. So I'm just not going to take that sort of a number on him. Other 2 than the 2 that we have to look at is a Cole +225, a Meissner +175. Neither one played particularly well. I believe Meissner was even or over par. Cole was the same way, didn't have his best stuff, but Cole has a top 10 finish at this event in the past. That might be enough to take him at +225. Now, do I think there's massive value on that? Probably not, because he's not the favorite here, right? That's Rico Hoey. We established that ahead of the fact. You probably went closer to +235 to +240 to enter in something like a Cole there. So it would be Cole or bust, but I would probably stay away myself. He said maybe a bogey or worse to go with Burns, maybe over for Hughes at 2.5. That was a good call, man. I took the under on the greens, obviously, but that would have been another solid lean too. The bogey or worse average was 3 per round, and I'm not sure on his bogey or worse ranking on the year. Obviously, his green ranking was low, and that's why we went with that. But let me double check on that for you. Oh, wrong category. Jeez Louise. It's late, guys. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit cooked. Let's find what Hughes is here. So 102 in the category, about average. I'm okay with that lean, right? An average round is about 3 bogeys or worse. So no complaints from me. He said Prize Picks and Underdog are definitely going to upload them when I end it. Yeah, I'm used to it. And it's just, it's annoying, but it's expected. They don't like me too much. JT versus English matchup. He said, JK. You guys are just trying to trigger me at this point. I love it. He said, you like Homa +100 over Davis for the 2-ball. So yeah, those 2 balls can be interesting. +100, so you're getting that 50% equity right there. I have to admit, Homa's not playing the best golf. Thompson's not playing like a world beater either, though. So that is at least within the realm of possibility. What we're going to do to analyze that one is we're going to go to the Bet the Number matchup tool, which, by the way, if you guys aren't already a part of Bet the Number and you bet 2 balls, 3 balls, that kind of stuff, you probably should. They have amazing stuff over here as we normally do on these live streams. So we're going to go to the last 24 rounds and look at these 2 players. I don't care how they played today. Again, 18-hole sample size is nonsense. But over the last 24 rounds, Thompson, as expected, is the better player. He's about a half a stroke better per round. So I don't know if I could take him at +100, man. I mean, that's implying a 50% win rate, right? And if these 2 had similar shots gained numbers over the last 24 rounds, then I could substantiate playing something at +100, which is a 50-50 hit rate. But as the player that is deficient in not playing as well, I don't see the value on that one. So just my take. I don't think it's the worst bet, though, right? He's at least plus money odds on that. He said, do I game at all? If so, what do I play? Yeah, I game a lot. Used to game a lot more, obviously. I'm a lot more busy these days. I play a lot of Counter-Strike. I play a lot of sports games, so like Madden, play some NBA 2K, that kind of stuff. And then some old games I used to play. I shouldn't even say this, it's so nerdy. Like League of Legends, stuff like that. I used to play some like Minecraft. I used to like run Minecraft servers when I was in high school. Made almost $100,000 running a Minecraft server when I was in high school. It was essentially my job. I didn't work at like the gas station like a lot of kids did in high school. I ran a Minecraft server and took donations from little kids, which it sounds crazy, but hey, that was what I was doing. I was hustling when I was in high school. Yeah, I like gaming, man. I still even play Minecraft a little bit to this day. It's a legendary game in my opinion. It's just so much you can do on there, and when you're dicking around with your buddies, it's quite a fun time, I'd say. Is Bet the Number a free website or is it a subscription-based website? It's subscription-based. So just like Fantasy National, Rick Run Good, all of those other websites. The thing about Bet the Number, though, and it's not just because I'm partnered with them that I'm saying this. That's obviously part of it. But the reason why I'm partnered with Bet the Number as opposed to all the other websites is that they're betting-based and they're prop-based. They have the DFS stuff. They have the database. Like, for example, we click on Homa, right? Like, they have the stuff that all the other websites have. OWGR, I mean, it's loading the shots gained metrics, you name it, right? You even have an advanced analytic profile on all these players, which can be the absolute nuts. But the thing that they add on top of it are whole props. They have the matchup tab that you can go through. And then they're adding more functionality this year. And I can't say too much about it because they still haven't announced it themselves, right? It's just private conversations that I've had with the Bet the Number team. They are adding a whole betting system for next year and like completely overhauling the website to make it more betting and prop focused. So that's what I really like about it. So yeah, it's subscription based. It's cheaper than a lot of the other big websites out there as well. And if you sign up, use code Gsluke. That will give you a discount off those memberships. I'd highly recommend it, by the way. You said, Tree, you got to sign up for that. Dude, it's the nuts. Like, I don't say that lightly. I don't partner with a lot of websites on purpose because first off, I like my stuff and what I have to offer. But if I'm going to partner up with a website, it's because there's tangible value there, right? Like I don't just do it for the money. Like, frankly, none of these websites offer you enough money to just do it for the money. It's just not really worth it. I do it because I believe in their product, believe in what they have to do, and they believe in my channel and what I'm doing here with my content too. So it goes both ways. But yeah, they're adding more to it too. I mean, I showed you guys a lot of the tools on here already. These hole by hole stuff, by the way, just to show you what this is, I do this all the time when I'm looking at like pin locations, is you can go to the year, then you can click on the round and look at the actual hole by hole scoring. And because they post all the pin sheets on Twitter, right? It's like public information over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Then we can go type on Twitter, round 2 Procore championship, and we can match up the pin locations and then run some analysis that way and see how easy or hard the pin locations are. I can't give away too much, but that might be automated in 2025. Let's just put that way. There's a chance that with some GPS data, we might be able to automate that. It's going to be a hard thing to do. I'm going to try and help them out with it, but that would be extremely valuable. I mean, think about it this way, right? You could say load pins, right? Click a thing that says load pins, and it can show you the stat averages for all those pin locations. Sounds pretty good, huh? At least to me, it sounds like a pretty good deal. So we're going to try and do that. He said, dog, we have to play CS. What rank am I? I'm a 10K ELO, so I'm okay, but I'm not great. I have friends that are professionals at Counter-Strike, so they carry me a lot to those kind of ranks. So I'm probably not a true 10K. Is it also second time catching the live? You appreciate it? Of course, Nathan. Nice to have you. And yeah, you're a newer name, so nice to have you as a part of the crew. Smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. He said he used to play League a shit ton too, and you play a few ARAM games. Yeah, ARAM's fun. I like the chaos of it. You don't really get to choose much ahead of time, but I like that. He said, am I betting DP World Tour? This tournament's awesome. I wish they had props up, but yeah, I am paying attention to it for sure. It's something that I've been tracking for my DFS exposure. Prop-wise, we don't have anything to bet for the next day, but yeah, paying attention to it for sure. That event, that field, it's as good as we get on the DP World Tour. It's a Rolex Series event as well. He said 100K well earned. Yeah, it is. It was a lot of work, but dude, I mean, I was just running a server and I got to act as like a dictator on the server. It was quite funny. Imagine this, like a 12-year-old running a Minecraft server. Like it, as you can imagine, it was a shit show, right? Do I have a code? Yeah, it's Gsluke DFS. That's the code. and said he got to wait till next year. Not much golf left this year. Yeah, I wouldn't blame you that for Nathan. I think that makes perfect sense to wait until the year after. I was hoping that just talking, kind of saying random shit for 5 minutes would give us these lines. Frankly, I was hoping that maybe these underdog lines makers or prize picks lines makers would just kind of like say, oh, screw it, right? Just post the lines. Luke is going to be here forever. But you still haven't posted them. So it's past midnight on the East Coast. I'm going to have to call it at this point, guys. I appreciate you guys stopping by with all the content as per usual, showing all the love and support on the channel as you guys always do. Let's try and bounce back tomorrow, right? It was a -2 unit today. Got to take one on the chin sometimes and then try and bounce back the next. Let's see what we can do out there for Friday. So if we can cash out on that 2-man, that would get us back into the positive. That would be pretty nice out here for our free slips. But for everything I'm taking on top of that, underdog prize picks for round number 2, you guys can find that on my Patreon page. I'll be looking at the boards tomorrow morning. Maybe they don't post them tonight. I mean, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. So we're just going to have to wait until tomorrow to see what they give us with those boards. But once we get those, I'll be deep diving those after I get my morning coffee. But it's all I've got. I appreciate your support here. As I said before, guys, I'll see you guys out there tomorrow night for the round 3 live stream here on the channel.